Welcome to the Grow Your Money podcast, where we're on a mission to change how we talk about money. Our fireside chats are the heart of our show, bringing the energy and excitement of in-person events straight to your ears. We aim to connect you with inspiring voices and stories that matter, sharing relatable experiences and insights that will transform your financial life. Everyone deserves access to practical financial knowledge, so we're making money conversations relatable by inviting guests from all walks of life to share their real-life experiences with money. But this isn't your typical money show. We look at the emotional, psychological, and cultural factors that shape our relationship with money. So hit subscribe and join us for another episode of the Grow Your Money podcast.
Hello and welcome. I am so excited to be here with you guys today. This is slightly different from the usual Grow Your Money Challenge stuff we've been doing because part of the Grow Your Money Challenge is we're trying to make money accessible to anyone that's new to money. And what other way to be new to money than be an immigrant that's moving or has experienced, coming to the country from abroad, first, second, third, even fourth generation. It affects you some way, or it just, the way you deal with money is different. So really excited about this episode of an immigrant's financial journey in the UK. But I'll start off by doing something interesting. First of all, I'll let you introduce yourselves. And then I'm going to pick on Martin and go slightly deeper to just look at your money ethos. And we'll do that using a few bits of a puzzle to figure you out.
Intriguing.
Sounds daunting.
No pressure here, right?
So tell us about you. Who is Martin?
Yeah, my name is Martin Kalemba, my full name. I was born in Glasgow. My family moved to live in Uganda, that's where I traced my African ancestry. We moved to live in Uganda. I was before I turned 5 or something like that. So I grew up in Uganda. Came back to Scotland in 2004, and I've lived in Glasgow ever since. So a whole lot of firsts have happened for me in Glasgow, including a whole lot of my experience with money.
This is what is this even? Are you an immigrant? Are you who are you? I'm trying to figure out.
If anyone was to ask me if I'm first generation or anything along those lines, I would say I am first because I grew up in Uganda. I had my very African experience. And in natural conversation around Glasgow, when people ask me, where are you from? That question.
The standard question.
Just for laughs, I do say I'm from Glasgow. And they're like, no, you can't be from Glasgow. But it's because, yes, I am authentically African in every sense of the way. And so I do present as first generation. Yeah.
Interesting. Do you know, I had never thought about whether I'm first, second, or third or anything until my kids turned a certain age and they were like, oh, Mommy, you're Ugandan and I'm not. I was like, wait, how? When did that happen? So what about you, Muna?
So, I have the opposite story. I was born in Somalia, and then my parents moved here when I was just turning 5. And interestingly, my dad had been transferred over to London when we moved here, but I had actually come via Senegal and Libya and all these other countries my dad was working in. So all my brothers and sisters are born in different locations. My youngest sister is born here, so she has that, where are you from? And she's like, hello. But yeah, so been living here. And my heritage is Somali, obviously, but obviously half of my family is from Kenya as well.
Wow, interesting. And Nina, you have a very eclectic...
Yes. So my name is Nina Mohanty. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called Blue Money. And I'm an immigrant to the UK from the US, which, we have that special relationship, US-UK. But I am doubly immigrant in that, so I'm an immigrant to the UK, but my parents immigrated to the US. So I am both first and second generation immigrant. My father's Indian, my mother is Taiwanese. And as I shared previously, my first language is Mandarin. So if you ever need someone to speak Chinese, I'm your gal.
That is so cool. Such a good thing to have.
These
Put it on
days,
your CV.
these days, very helpful.
Very nice. So we've already asked you this in different episodes, but so we'll pick on you, Martin, and try to go under the bonnet of your money personality. If you were to describe your relationship with money using an emoji, which emoji would it be?
An emoji. Knowing now what I do as compared to what I knew 18 years ago, I think I would use the wow one. The open-mouthed one.
Wow.
That's the one I would choose. And reason being is that I think a whole lot of my anxieties around, expenditure and investment and security and stability have been from a point of ignorance and not knowing how to invest and how best to save or what to spend on. So I think if say I could go back 18 years and look at me now, if I could see into the future, I think I'll go, wow, no need to stress.
That
this
is
what
so
you do.
cool.
Yeah.
That is so cool. So like it was all based on a lack of knowledge.
Yes, absolutely. Because my experience was that I lived in Uganda, my childhood life, the whole of it. I spent it all in boarding school where we didn't use money at all. Our parents paid for us to be there, and then everything was taken care of. So I didn't handle money. I didn't earn. I had my first job in Scotland when I moved over. So all that, I came from dealing with it. Of course, there was pocket money, school holidays and things like that to spend on the simplest of things, but I didn't have reason to invest or I didn't earn a living in Africa when I was in Uganda. So coming over, I had to learn real quick, right? This is my first job, right? What do I do with the money? My first bank account, I got that in Scotland. So there was so many firsts from that, and not many people to really talk about it with, like, if I'm earning this much today, on a temporary job, what are my summer plans? Do I want to go on holiday? Do I want to do this? Do I want to do that? So I think I could have spent wiser. I could have done a lot of things a whole lot differently, but a whole lot was too new that it just, it took a minute. Yeah. It took a minute.
It takes a minute. It does take a minute. It does take a minute even for people who are born and bred here, to be fair. So, yeah. So moving on to a creative streak then, if you were to design a TikTok about personal finance, what would it be and what would the hashtag be?
It would be, oh man, that's a challenging one. I would place it thematically on investments from the smallest savings. I wouldn't look at big aggregate investments, but say if going back to where I started, that I spent a whole lot of money unwisely because I could, on clothes, on trips that didn't have much value or whatever, and whatever I could have foregone, I think if those tiny bits of money I could have put aside and invested in something, I think that's the kind of challenge I would put. Say if it was, I don't know, even if it was about buying coins or stamps or anything like that, that would be my kind of TikTok challenge, so that it would attract anybody. Even kids could get in on that, Yeah, that
would be so awesome. Yeah. And honestly, I think you're quite right. Like, we think about investing and we think it's this big thing. I need £10,000 to invest, whereas the stuff you could be investing in that's as little as stamps, whiskey. These days you can buy a barrel of whiskey. There's lots of different things. So that would be an awesome one. And what are your financial goals? What financial goals do you have for this year or the near future?
To increase on my savings discipline. Because I think, yes, I do save, but every so often I think I kind of let go.
We've all been there.
And I catch myself thinking, what was that?
What happened?
Why did I do it? So I want to get out of the habit of reviewing, especially my summer experiences, and going, what happened?
Where did it go?
So I get into my summertime, I think the winters are easier to, in my experience, it's easier to save in the winters because there's not much to do. You're stuck indoors, right? And then summertime comes around and I want to eat out every week. Every other day, I'm calling for takeaways. I'm going shopping because I like that. Online, when it's just looking online and thinking, I'll have that. And before you know it, the money is gone. So, yeah, I could do better in the summers. And that's, this year it's top of my list to see what I do with that.
One of the things that I think I've learned growing up, because I'm the same, like, I love a good life. So I like poshness. I like opulence. But what I do is I put as many barriers between me and the money as I can. So if I'm saving, I'll make sure, one, it's in an account I'll not have an app for that account. Then I will not have the card easily available. So I try and do that. Like I try and put all these stops in place so that by the time I decide to go for that takeaway, it's like, you know what? It's fine.
It's not worth it. Too much work.
Too
much work.
Or too close. It's always at
when
a
it's
click,
too close, you're going to, if you're anything like me. I was telling someone a story about an air fryer, and this air fryer was a need. I'm like, I must have this air fryer. And I thought, Tina, it's not a need actually. It's not life or death. Your brain is telling you wrong. It's not.
I always have that conversation with my kids when we're out shopping or anything, and they go, Daddy, I need these sweeties. I need this chocolate in my life. They are quite dramatic in their expectations. They go, I must have it. I need it right now. I go, no, you don't need it, Stephanie. You don't need it. You just want it. And so they do that to me when I'm going, I must have that bottle of wine. I need to have that glass of wine. And they go, no, Daddy, you don't need it.
You don't need it. A good lesson, absolutely. So now this is open to all of us, and I'd be interested to know because, you all do different roles. You work for an organization, you run an organization, you're a business owner. How has, being an immigrant, being new, let's call it new to country for lack of a better word, because we don't know what Martin is. He's an imposter right now, as far as we are aware. We don't know what to do with you. But how has your growing up and your life being new to the place affected or impacted how you view money?
Who first?
We'll go with you.
Yeah, happy to go first. So I should introduce myself because I'm amongst friends and I totally forgot. So I'm Muna Yassin, CEO of Fair Money Advice. So I think for me it was slightly different because obviously I grew up here. And it was interesting because most immigrants have that issue around their parents don't speak English, potentially they're learning a new language. So I was very lucky in that both of my parents were fluent in English, pretty well educated, and had lived in different environments and were able to kind of bring their lived experience to the UK. And so for me, it was a sense of looking at what was their shared learning from being in different environments and different societies, and also what the English culture was. And so growing up, I think one of the things that was very interesting to me was how aligned my parents' structure around saving, making sure that you live within your means, ensuring that you save for a rainy day, actually aligned with the old British culture around don't spend more than you earn, and making sure that you don't buy things on credit. And then as I started to come into my teenage years, the world kind of exploded and there was this credit society and we were very American.
Wow.
Sorry, Nina.
This is very interesting. So there was a time when this was not the way?
No, there was. And I think the British way actually has been lost because actually there was a very focus on actually being budgeting, managing your finances well, and ensuring that you didn't live beyond your means. And they prided themselves on it, right? So it was really nice to have that kind of alignment. Then as I started kind of growing up, like I say, there was this creditization and consumption kind of society that came in, and it rewired the whole country, and it rewired everybody. And that had a clash with me and my parents because they were like, no, this is how you are brought up. Yes. But then at the same time, they are faced with teenagers. I want it right now. And so they then had to adapt to the environment that they're living in. And so I think for me, it was just very interesting to see that clash and to see actually this huge shift between what was at home and what was outside, and then this outside influence that just came in. So I think that's been very interesting to see. And then we are now starting to see, with the highest in debt levels in Europe, what that kind of process has had on the UK. So I think that's something that still sticks into my mind.
Very interesting, because I remember we've been here about maybe 6 months or so, and something came through the door that we could buy chairs on credit. And I was just so fascinated. I was like, what on earth? Chairs? Because that was new to me. So I just assumed that was the way of Britain.
Yeah, no. Back in the day, people actually, if you wanted it, you rented it.
Wow.
Oh God,
wow.
Yeah, you would go and rent a sofa or a TV. Yeah. And people actually would make sure that they didn't go into credit for any essentials.
Wow, very interesting.
You're listening to the Grow Your Money podcast. We'll be right back after giving our partners a well-deserved shout-out. Are you struggling with debt and financial exclusion? Rooted Finance is a pioneering pan-London debt advice and financial inclusion charity, providing free money and debt advice services for over 20 years. Their team reflects the communities they serve to provide culturally appropriate services, putting you on the path towards financial freedom and resilience. Get in touch with them today to take the first steps toward getting on top of your finances.
And Nina, how have you found it as speaking now as an entrepreneur, being an entrepreneur in the UK, being from the States with, your background? Yeah. How has that been?
It's been very conflicting because my business is set up to serve immigrant communities, diaspora communities specifically. And obviously we all have different stories and different financial journeys. But I think one of the common refrains that I hear from a majority of the people I speak to is this feeling of a scarcity mindset. Sometimes linked directly to the reasons why we've come to a country. So, I have friends whose parents were refugees, and that trauma from leaving the country and taking everything on your back and leaving, that stays with you. And that's kind of passed down as generational trauma, which, not to coin a new term, but it manifests as a financial trauma. Yes. I think even with my own parents, they came as economic immigrants to the US, but very much had this scarcity mindset in that everything was, can we save even an extra penny? Just a little bit more. And it's good in the broader scope of things. It's like, well, why buy a brand name hand soap when you can just buy a Target or a Costco or a Tesco brand hand soap? It's the same thing, right? That's fine. That's good practice. But I think that has really infected, dare I say, use that word, my attitude towards money, which is then conflicting with being an entrepreneur, because you are in a bit of a scarcity mindset when you're an entrepreneur starting something on your own, because there is a limited amount of resources. We've had the conversation of constantly trying to find funding, raise funding to get to the next stage. You're often making judgment calls. Do we invest in doing a bit of marketing, or do we invest in tech, or, whatever it might be? So I think to this day, my money mindset very much colors all the decisions I make in my life. It colors whether I go on holiday. It colors whether I decide to get a takeout, right? So I think it's a complex one, and I'm trying to actively move myself into a abundance mindset where the money will come. Work hard, the money will come. Obviously, it doesn't just show up magically. God, that'd be amazing. But it's been a journey, and I've had to really have conversations with myself, with my family, about why is it that I feel this way all the time.
Very interesting. And yesterday I was at an event and someone was talking about this term I've never had called mindset privilege, which is definitely on reflection a thing, because we don't realize that our mindset is shaped by the things that we either grew up seeing. You know, Muna, you've just shared about your family always having been stringent and able to save, and everything was compartmentalized. So it drives how you think. So someone who has grown up with a scarcity mindset, that's your default mode. And so some people have a mindset privilege because they've been brought up, you can do anything you put your mind to type of mindset. You're going to have a different trajectory from someone who's like, oh gosh, I'm a loser, I cannot do anything right? And it's a privilege that we don't ever take into account. So then on your journeys, what do you find are the biggest differences or the biggest gaps that you're finding in terms of trying to manage money as, you know, new to country in some way, shape or form? Maybe even not just for yourself, but maybe in Muna's case, your parents. What are those challenges or differences that you've seen on the journey? Martin?
I think for me, it's very much more a sense of ownership. I think when you come, like, going about the idea of scarcity and abundance, very often I catch myself wondering if, to what extent my money is actually mine. You know, and you feel like, right, okay, so this month I've got a bit of, some spare cash, but does my cousin somewhere need it? Could I
Very interesting.
help my auntie out
Very
on this?
interesting.
Could I help this friend with that? And I think over the years, I still find myself questioning how comfortable I really am with my money being mine. Like, even saying
Very
it, I feel
interesting.
like it's a bit vulgar.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Very
so
interesting.
it's-
And
my
you know
mindset
what's
is still
interesting?
work in progress
That's
on
something
that.
that's very unique to foreign cultures, because I feel, or my understanding of British culture is, your money is your money. Like, what are you talking about? You go for lunch. I remember the first time being invited for lunch and then being asked to split the bill. And I'm thinking, you called me to lunch? How are we splitting the bill? You know? It's
You invited me.
You invited me. I had nothing to do with this decision. How am I splitting this bill with you? You know. So I think we have this, just this nature of having to share, having to give, and your money is not yours alone. There's like 10 people that should be benefiting from your money. Very interesting. And how has that colored how you deal with money then?
I think I find myself sometimes making decisions to give where perhaps naturally I wouldn't, and my savings discipline is quite affected by that. I feel like money, if I was saving it and I know there's somebody that I would, like somebody who needs a bit of it, then even if I chose to save, I would still feel that sense of guilt. Should I be saving this? And am I gonna be able to hang on to it? Because it comes off like karma comes around. You didn't help when you should have helped, and your money is gonna have some
Very
issues.
interesting.
So
It's going to come back on you.
it's going to come back on
Yeah.
you. And, sometimes it's very much a cultural thing. And also from that religious perspective, when you've been programmed Christian, say, from childhood and all that, and, give and give and give. It takes a little while to shake it off and probably be comfortable with what is really on, at least in my experience. So I find,
Very interesting. We've had a conversation like this before with Muna, saying that the typical budgeting tools in the UK don't account for things like that.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
You just
Yes.
It's like, guys, I mean, I had an incident where HMRC literally wrote to us and they said we were breaching, you know, they thought we were avoiding tax because of our giving. And we had to prove that. I'm like, well, is this not what happens? Like, do you guys not give? Yeah. Like, the amount that you're giving it's not natural. What do you mean?
Wow.
We're supposed
Not to you.
Not to you, but is it not, you know? Yeah. So you're very interesting. And so when you're looking at budgeting naturally, there's a way that the culture is supposed to expect you to be budgeting, but you're wired and your family and your lifestyle expects you to be budgeting differently. Very interesting. And what are you finding at Fair Money Advice in, you know, maybe in relation to what Martin's point?
I think that point is so important because I think that individualism is driven into Western society, right? So it's about look after yourself first, make sure that you're planning for your future and nobody else's future. But where we come from, actually, it's about your family, your wider community, and your responsibilities. And there's a level of responsibility on you to contribute to that. So we see that amongst our clients. And so when we have that conversation around, we're kind of coming up with financial plans to get people out of debt, and people don't understand that a financial commitment is sending money back home. Yeah. And it's as important to that individual for their well-being, but also even when they are coming out of debt and they're able to kind of rebuild their credit, they're not being rewarded for good financial behavior, right? Because that commitment and that $100 that they're sending every single month is a clear sign that they have that surplus income. Yeah. And that they can budget for it, and that they are making a good financial commitment. They're not rewarded for it through the credit referencing agency. But I think the other point that I wanted to kind of just, from my family's perspective, I think, and from what I've seen within the Somali community, and I'm sure it happens across other communities, is that sense of, is this my home? So is this where I make my financial investment? And the sense of attachment. Absolutely. So there's an attachment to back home. And I think that happens from the first generations that came along. But that's changing amongst the diaspora because we recognize that actually this is our home, right? If you're born here, if you've grown up here, you have an investment here. And I think there's a shift happening around where our investments are, where our assets are, but also taking into consideration where we have surplus, and sometimes it does affect our own savings, and where our commitments are back home and with family. Yeah. But that shift around assets and investments, I think, is something that's so powerful, that's untapped. And I think it's an opportunity for the diaspora community to really kind of flex their financial muscle. And I think it's something that we can start to kind of help through the Grow Your Money Challenge, but also ensuring that as people are going through a financial difficult period, we really start to get them to think about, well, what's the next phase? How do you get back into financial inclusion? And what are your aspirations? Because we're finding the younger generation are here, they're not going anywhere, and they need to start thinking about what their long-term financial futures are here.
If I can add to that, I think as an American citizen, I have this very interesting dynamic where I can't invest with certain platforms, for example, because of FATCA, which is a piece of legislation which effectively means that that investment platform would have to open up their books to the IRS, which no one wants to do, right? Fine. So it's a tax issue, right? And so there's typically the large businesses, Hargreaves Lansdown, Vanguard, that I can open an account with. But a lot of the fintech companies that make it really easy to invest with £50 or whatever, I struggle to open an account. And I was thinking through this today because actually, as an American citizen, I'm also liable for taxation on my British investments. So my pension, for example, that I've been paying into for the past, almost 10 years, could be clawed at by the IRS in the US. So that question of like, where do I invest? Where do I want my assets to be? where is home is a very, not just an existential question, but a financial question. And the other thing that I think, speaking of pensions, I was thinking about as an immigrant child, or a member of a diaspora community is, I don't know about any of you, but, my mother is increasingly going back to Taiwan more and more. One of my really dear friends, Sarah, her mother is constantly going back to Hargeisa. And even though Sarah's mother, for example, has been in London for most of her life now, Hargeisa is still home.
Yeah.
And there's an interesting, almost like repatriation as people age. They retire and want to go back home. And we see interesting flows of remittances where actually someone's bought a plot of land, they're buying a house, and now they're going to retire at home. But then on the flip side, so that again, question of where is home? Can you bring that money with you? Can you bring your pension with you? But also, I think in a lot of global South communities, this idea of us being responsible for our parents. So I am my parents' pension,
We are the retirement plan.
Exactly. It's like, what retirement plan? Like, you're my retirement plan.
Children.
Yes. What did I raise you for, if not for you to take care of me? And so that is a very interesting dynamic, and something we think about a lot at Blue Money, where it's like, okay, so my parents haven't been paying into their pension, or maybe they've the bare minimum in, even though, oftentimes mom is not working. Yeah. So now we're responsible for mom and dad, and how do you, as like a young person today, you're like, right, I've got to pay into my pension, my savings. Now I'm going to take over sending remittances home, and now I also have to take care of mom and dad. Yeah. So I think there's all these additional layers, which make for a very beautiful, rich life, but a slightly complex, a more complex financial life, sadly.
Absolutely. That's so interesting. You said that about the pension plan. I remember when we were getting married and we had all these plans for our wedding. We're like, we're having so many guests and this and this. And our parents were like, what do you mean? You get to do that when you have your children? This wedding's ours? What are you talking about?
Oh,
we do.
Yeah.
It's my day.
Yeah. It's like, you want how many guests?
Yeah.
No. You do that when you have your own children.
Yes. That's your party. This is our party.
Yeah, this is ours. And I think it affects how you approach everything, isn't it? How you approach relationships. So when I'm relationship building, I'm trying to, create a relationship, I'm expecting us to be closer. I'm calling you in, I'm hugging you. And yet, because that's the community type of way that I show you that I like you and I see you. Whereas here, it's very different stuff. And you have to navigate all that, right? It's like, how are you? So if you give me your hand, does that mean you like me? Where are we? Where do we stand? And for me, I find that I'm always having to say, come over to my house. That means that I've validated you enough to say, I like you enough to come home, right? So it's very funny and different. And how are you finding that at Bloom Money? Because just talk to us a bit about that piece, because that's a very, very awesome and interesting product, especially because it just speaks to what we are saying around this concept of how much of my money is my money. I just like how you put it, Martin. How much of my money is my money, and then your product at Bloom. So how does that play out?
It's a very interesting dynamic, and I was nodding furiously when Martin was saying how much of my money is my money. And I think we, as diaspora, have such a complex relationship that building boundaries can be very difficult, healthy boundaries. It's very difficult to have that conversation to say, I mean, we were talking about this earlier, like, is this a real valid request? Is someone ill at home, or am I being taken advantage of? And
somebody's cashing their claim on you.
Yes.
A fraction of you that's theirs.
In our research, a majority of the people said they felt like ATMs.
You're listening to the Grow Your Money podcast. We'll be right back after giving our partners a well-deserved shout-out. Calling all partners, join the Grow Your Money Challenge. We're excited to present our incredible sponsors who believe in empowering individuals and communities on their financial journey. Discover their services and join us in creating a brighter financial future. Featuring the Royal Bank of Scotland, your trusted banking partner with a rich heritage and comprehensive financial services. Explore their online banking at www.rbs.co.uk. Gift Round. Make group gifting a breeze. Celebrate special occasions together with colleagues, friends, and family. Create a gift round at giftround.co.uk and show your appreciation. Radiant and Brighter, promoting diversity and economic participation in migrant communities. Get involved with their innovative practices at radiantandbrighter.com. Rooted Finance. Struggling with debt or financial exclusion? Rooted Finance provides free money and debt advice services to put you on the path to financial freedom. Join the Grow Your Money Challenge in this transformative journey toward financial growth and resilience. Visit moneymatics.com to get involved today.
Diaspora, they feel like they're constantly sending money home. And so at Bloom, just for context, our product is called Bloom Circles. It's a digital version of something many Global South cultures have. So we've talked about sakos, we've talked about hegvad, ayuto. I know it as chit or hui in my cultures. Harambe, chama in Swahili. So many different names for this. But isn't it so interesting in the Global South, in Latin America, in Asia, in Middle East, the whole idea is people get together and it's a savings group together. And the reason that I think that speaks to me is it kind of flies in the face of this conversation we've been having of, is it my money? But flips it on its head and actually, what can we as a community do together? Can we increase our affordability, increase our economic power one at a time so that we all benefit? This is something that I watched my grandparents do. It's something that I've seen I live in Lewisham in London, so I see it all around me. And the more people I meet, the more I see other people and they say, oh, in my culture we call it this. And really what we're doing at Bloom is bringing it into the 21st century and making it into an easy, safe-to-use app. But to your point about behaviors that aren't recognized by the financial system, like sending money home. Similarly, I know so many people who are in these groups doing them in cash in the UK, and that's a positive, you're putting £100 into a pot every month, you're putting 200, 300. I know, the Somalis have got it on lock, £1,000 in, like the circle buy-in is high. And so that's positive financial behavior. Why aren't we rewarding it? And so that's our starting point at Bloom. It's kind of flipping the financial system on its head because it is very binary in the UK. In the Western world, it's very me and my money and like I have a relationship with the bank and the bank will decide if I can get a loan. But actually, community has been there since day one for so many of us. So can we lean on the community more?
Absolutely, and I think that's the same strand on with the Grow Your Money Challenge. It's we can start from the center. But all of us as a community can do so much more together. We can share resources, we can understand, we can unpack these things together and do it for good, and it's fascinating to hear. So sticking with you then, Nina, when you think about now your journey as an entrepreneur and having the circles dealing with the communities, and how do you balance that out with having to conform to regulation, to being an entrepreneur, and then this very
how much time do you have? I think when I set out to start Bloom, and we all tangentially work in financial services, right? So we know the FCA, the Financial Conduct Authority, for those that are not familiar, is not someone that you play around with. they call their a sandbox. You're not playing. You're not there to play. I think the hardest hurdle to jump over was this idea, again, of the binary in Western world, where the bank will assess you and then decide what you can have or can't have. And this idea of anything community-led, unless specifically it's a credit union, I think or a building society is the closest thing that we have, is very foreign, quite literally, to a lot of people, whether it's the regulator or to investors when I was pitching them. And so what we've done is really had to be innovative about our approach to it. We are now regulated, but it took a lot of hoops. It took a lot of breaking down of stereotypes. To your point of HMRC ringing you up and saying there's an abnormal amount of money leaving your account, it's the same thing where, you know, a lot of borderline racist, xenophobic questions were asked about our customer base. Who are they? Where are they sending the money? What are they doing with it? Where is the money coming from? Lots of things. All valid questions, but I think it was worth it because being regulated by the FCA is such a stamp, you know, in the UK.
It absolutely is.
And hopefully will reassure people that we are very much taking their money seriously. But it was not a walk in the park at all.
On the questions, the one that normally gets me is, do they have mobile phones?
Oh,
Like, let's see, do they?
oh no, my favorite
They have
was
someone in another country, so I think that would be very high on the priority list, but what are you
do they know
thinking?
how to use them?
Do they know how to use the phone?
Have you heard of M-Pesa? Do you know how advanced they are?
Yeah, I know.
Way
Mobile
more
phone
advanced.
banking.
Oh, my favorite was but people of color are poor. And I was like, sorry? Could you just repeat that again? Yeah. So it's been a journey, but
Yes.
due credit to the FCA. They were very patient, very open to hearing how things are done. And after, you know, the beautiful thing is if you plant the seed in someone's head, it will grow. And so I had people from the FCA coming back and be like, oh, I was talking with my Uber driver, or I was talking with this person, and they're doing it. And I was like, I'm telling
There you
you,
go.
it's all around
it-
you.
yeah.
You just have to look.
You just have to look, absolutely. And then, so sticking with that theme then, how important has it been for you to, I don't want to use the word integrate, but to know people on this journey? Because I remember, like, when I was, you know, starting out Moneymatics, even today, it's just hard to try and align yourself in a certain way because you're bringing something that's not a typical concept. How important is your network and your, you know, the people that are around you in understanding or approaching money when you're new, you know, new to country? Martin, you'd be a good one for this one with your duo.
Yeah, I think I take it in two ways. I think I've realized the cash value of trust, and I see that in both ways. Because when I first came to live in Scotland in my adult life, I watched a few of my friends trying to do the circle thing, and they would collect cash and have weekly meetings, and then they would, you know, pass the basket around or something like that. They would do that thing, and oftentimes it fell apart because, you know, somebody stopped chipping in, or somebody did this and didn't pay back, or something like that. Now, on the other side, I look at my friends whom I came up with in school in Uganda, and they've made a successful business model around this. As a class, they come together, become a circle, and they collect money, and they're investing in real estate and actually running real credible businesses. And I've got so much respect for that, because it shows that they have that trust that enables to enable the enterprise to carry through. And similarly, in the Western world, where our migrant communities are succeeding with that, it's purely on trust, you know. So I feel that's been my major takeaway, because I am quite deficient on trust when it comes to money. I think I found myself in positions where I think my resources could have been treated with a bit more respect from people that I ought to have trusted the most. And so I do not, I'm quite inhibited in the extent to which I subscribe to the communal savings theory. Yeah.
So an attitude matter, but I like what you've said about the cash value of your trust. Would it not be so cool if you could have a credit score based
Yeah.
like this
Quantify
person's
it,
behavior,
yeah.
Should be
right?
somebody researching.
Yes,
This
absolutely.
person's behavior, they say they're going to do what they do, they're giving to a mosque, a church, or whatever, and so these things give them this score of trust, and this, because it is a valuable thing and hard to come by.
We're working on it. Watch this space.
I was going to say, if anyone can do it, anyone can do it.
Absolutely.
Watch this
What about you, Muna?
I think it's interesting because obviously the savings clubs, I grew up around them. Yes. And I think nowadays they are harder to maintain. Yes. So the Somali community does have it on lockdown, but even them, they are much more tied to your kind of kin. Your tribe. People you knew from back in the day. So it's a bit of a closed shop. So if you're not part of that kind of circle, then what do you do? And if you don't have those ties? And I think it comes from the fact that the circumstances here are such that people are a bit more disparate, so the close connection isn't there. So I think something like Bloom is amazing because it allows people who, and we have had lots of conversations about this, but I think it allows people who are younger, people who don't have that family connection abroad and who can't get into those circles to really access that whole community approach in a safe environment that's regulated, and that can also then, hopefully, some of the development that you're doing, reintegrate you or integrate you for the first time into the kind of financial services sector of the host country that you're in, or the country that you're residing in. I think for our clients, I think there are some issues around information and misinformation within the community. And that's something that drives me insane.
How many times has it been forwarded on WhatsApp? And you're like, oh no.
So it's like the WhatsApp groups and the aunties on WhatsApp.
Oh, the aunties.
Need to put the phones down. Because the amount of people they've got into financial difficulty is off the scale.
They're like, buy it. They won't ask for the money back. Do it.
Or just, the financial fraud schemes that they've got people involved in, passing around malware and links to financial scams. And so
funny.
The aunties need to be stopped.
The aunties need to put
And
the
there
phones
could be
down.
some uncles doing it.
Yes.
Uncles too, definitely.
Yes.
Yes, to be fair.
To be fair, it's the aunties and
blame
the
to go
uncles.
around.
We have this saying in Somali that you have halimos and faras, right? So which are like the older male and female equivalent of aunt and uncle. So they need to be stopped. And so lots of our clients come in with things that they've heard or they've been advised to do. One of the biggest bugbears that we had a few years back was the guarantor loans. To people like Amigo and others who are in this space. And people being pressurized who are in good financial situations to guarantor loans for family members, and then not realizing that actually those things, you're the one who takes on the liability, and because of that family connection. So that's been something that we've had to kind of make sure the community is very aware of. There are issues around payday loans and the whole payday loan. There's free money, as it was put onto WhatsApp groups. There's access to easy money and those types of things. So I think misinformation, education, ensuring that financial literacy and education is something that our communities are showered with in the same easy ways that misinformation comes along. So I need a WhatsApp guru to be able to kind of disseminate all of that and ensure that people are getting the right advice and support around their finances, as opposed to the scammers and the dodgy dealers.
COVID was a good example. The fastness of information and varying experts just come up in minutes. It's like, who are you? Are you a doctor? Like, we don't seem to check our sources.
It was,
and that's
quite
just crazy.
Shocking, the first few months of COVID. People would just come up with all sorts of theories.
Of cures.
My favorite. My dad was like, you just need to have ginger tea with turmeric and you're going to be fine. I was like, Dad, do we?
Vitamin D.
Just take lots of vitamin D, you'll be fine.
It's like, I think we need, and you're quite right, and it's back to the community thing. Auntie and uncle cannot be telling me something wrong. It's auntie.
It's a trust thing.
The trust is so, it's ingrained. So she can't be telling me something wrong. If she's telling me to sign up for this, surely it's fine. If she wants me to guarantee a loan, it's fine. But we need to start questioning a bit more, like our sources on that. Absolutely.
I remember once one of my aunties sent me a message. She had received a leaflet or something about a seminar on some investment product or another. And these guys were conducting a Zoom meeting. She read it and she wasn't very comfortable about it, but she checked in with me and was like, could you, link in with these people, see what they're all about? It turned out to be the biggest scam that I would ever have seen. Literally, these guys were on Zoom advising their audience that they are a British bank, that they have offices in London, that's where their headquarters are. They're zooming in from West Africa. And the audience seemed hooked. And I struggled with this Zoom session because it wasn't allowing for anyone to make comments. By the time I logged off, I thought, this is how it happens. People make up they were a registered company, so they had a company registered in London at some address. But looking at the listed banks in the UK, they definitely want a bank. But they were selling that and saying, oh, we are a bank, we have a website, we are this and that. So it looked like, people were willing to trust that.
On that note, though, I hope you don't mind me asking, how do we dismantle that? Because I think about the fact that there is a lot of information out there, some that is vetted. We try to put out vetted, information for people. Is it translating it into more languages so that it's accessible in that language? Is it educating our elders in the community, whether that's going to the imam? Yes, please.
You know what they say, once bitten, twice shy?
Yes.
Better for some people to learn from experience.
Oh dear.
No, not to be controversial.
We can't advocate that. But I was like, no.
I think this is
just making more work for
Why not?
Not to be terribly selfish, but this is my logic. People get into these situations and then they are embarrassed to speak out about them. So when they make these big losses or they make these unwise financial decisions because of some influence or another, they'll take that experience and keep it to themselves. But if we have more people who've gone through that scam, that link that they shouldn't have clicked on, that reference from uncle this or auntie that, and they've been bitten by it, that sharing of a real life experience from somebody relatable could be the key to unlocking this whole, mystery around how we always end up trusting the wrong sources.
I love that, but the problem is people internalize it, like you say, and what tends to happen is people feel ashamed. They think they did something wrong. Yes. And if we could tap into actually who are the trusted sources. So in this case, we're mentioning aunties and uncles, but if we could tap into those trusted sources, if we could get the information out in the community languages, but also making sure that we're reaching the older communities, the younger communities, and also informing financial services on actually how they interact with our communities and the types of products that they design are relevant to them. So they're not always looking for that additional scam because they look like they provide something that meets their needs. So really working with financial services to ensure that they are responsive and that they have a role to play in actually ensuring that they are as inclusive to our communities as they should be.
Interesting.
How do you manage that though without making people feel like you are the knowledgeable one and you're lecturing them?
It's so hard.
I think
that's what we struggle with because we tend to not use the word education. We try and it's about language. It's about who goes and delivers the message. So we wouldn't say we're the experts. We try and kind of have people who have used our service, like you say, and who have kind of got to a point where they feel comfortable enough to share their story, but also feel a sense of responsibility to be able to disseminate that information. And I think when it comes from somebody who's been through that process, it's a totally different landing of that message.
Do you know if there's any support groups for people who've gone through those scams or things like that? Because I think there's a resource there from experience for people who've gone through those experiences to perhaps be more.
I think it's the culturally appropriate one, though, because I mean, The Guardian was doing tons of reporting on these scams recently, but it's interesting. Even I think within our communities, we already don't talk about money.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the one thing that we haven't said is we don't talk about money in a lot of our communities, and so there's an additional shame. So it almost have to be like, okay, this is a tribe that I really, really trust with my life, that I will never, like, this will not get outside of these doors, or like, maybe at church, maybe at mosque or something. We very much at Bloom try and work with community leaders, faith leaders, where they have that trust, but there's no silver bullets.
There's no silver bullet, absolutely. Because I was going to say it's about normalizing conversations, normalizing failure is extremely important, and we don't do that very well. We shout about all the winning and that, but if we start talking about, my goodness, that burnt, talk about it more, normalize it, and how we react when someone gets burnt is important as well. So we need to do that, and then have the aunties and uncles owning up to failing sometimes. So you sent out a scam to 10 WhatsApp groups, it's turned out wrong. Send a message to say, guys, I'm really sorry. That link actually I found out isn't working. And it's about those subtle education points and normalizing the fact that we are all human. I'm going to fail 1 or 2 times. So guys, that burnt me.
And also talking about it isn't airing your dirty laundry, right? Yes. So we internalize so much in our communities to say that, okay, what happens within your family group stays within your family group. But actually by sharing those experiences, it benefits everybody. And it's not kind of, you're not stepping outside of your boundaries. And I think the boundaries question is a massive one. But also ensuring that we're able to kind of have those conversations, normalizing them and talking about money. We only talk about money when things have gone wrong, and never in the sense of actually money is the catalyst for most things that you want to do in your life. So why shouldn't it be at the center of a lot of the conversations that are happening? And so, it's always when something's gone wrong that we talk about it.
Wow. Thank you so much. That's been awesome. To wrap up, could you each tell me one resource you found very helpful on your journey with money in the UK? Because that was one thing I remember coming and just not understanding how no one trusted me. Back to the trust thing, I was like, how can I prove to these people that I'm good, that I'm not going to cheat anyone, What resource, what's the one thing that you've used that you found very helpful? It can be anything at all, an app or an auntie. Anyone?
I think what I did for myself, I went to business school. Literally, it was a long-term investment. I went to university and I read business, and it's helped me have a more rounded view of all different segments of finance and investment, savings, and all that. So I couldn't pick any other thing that was more profoundly impactful than that.
Very interesting, and that will resonate with the community because our communities are typically very high achievers. So basically, what you're telling us is to go and get a degree in business.
Back to education.
Education.
Yes, one way or another, it comes back to it pays back. It does pay back. Yeah.
Nice one. Muna?
Interestingly, when I was growing up, there was not many aids. Like I said, if you wanted to learn something, you went to the library, pulled out a reference book. But I think there's so many tools online now that can be such a great source. So if you are coming from the space of understanding the basics, I would recommend the Money Advice and Pension Services Money Helper website, where you've got loads of tools, guides, etc., that can kind of get you up to speed. I think the place to start if you want to kind of improve your financial situation is to think about your credit rating and credit scoring and how that works. And so you may have a thin file, you don't have any footprint, how you improve that. You may have had a bad file and you want to improve it. So I would focus on understanding the credit rating, credit scoring. And I always explain it to people when I'm talking about our communities and how important it is for them to understand that it's like your reputation back home, right? Your name gets you into places.
Yeah.
In the West, your credit scoring gets you into places.
Absolutely. That is a good way to
So
put
for
it.
100%, I would start there.
Absolutely. That is so true. Your credit rating gets you into places
Yeah.
or kicks you out.
Exactly.
Literally. Yeah.
Literally.
Absolutely. Yes. Nina?
For me, well, I can shamelessly plug Moneymatics and the Bloom Money Learning Hub and fair finance and everything. I think, what was the resource? The resource that I really drew on myself was to be transparent about my own money situation and talk about it with a person I trusted. And this is helpful in everything from not just like, wait, how much are you putting in your pension? to when I was finally open with some girlfriends about what are we all earning and should we be asking for more, right? And the reason I say it's that I refer to transparency as a resource here because it is not natural for us to talk about money. Even in British culture, it's not natural to talk about money. But I think that's to our detriment. And so if you can find one person that you trust, and you go into it openly and say, right, this is what I'm dealing with, or, hey, I'm in debt, and just sometimes a problem shared is a problem solved, right? So that's really what helped me to get to grips with the UK and the financial system here.
Wow. Thank you all so much. You've been amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Grow Your Money podcast. If you're looking to take actionable steps toward achieving your financial goals, visit moneymatix.com. That is money, MATIX.com. And join our free Grow Your Money Challenge. Let's unite in the movement to inspire people to talk about money. Thank you for being a part of our community. We'll see you in the next episode.